Have you ever ignored someone because of the name on their badge? What if the quiet nurse standing in the corner was the only person who could save a dying soldier? Heavy rain covered the city as people rushed through the emergency entrance of Riverside Medical Center. Inside, doctors, nurses, and patients moved in every direction. Stretchers rolled across the floor. Phones rang without stopping. Monitors filled the air with endless beeping. Near the supply room stood a temporary nurse named Emma Carter. She quietly checked emergency equipment one piece at a time. She was not assigned to critical patients. Most people barely noticed her. Emma had worked at the hospital for almost 2 years as a temporary float nurse. She never complained. She never asked for attention. She simply did every small job perfectly. If stories about hidden heroes inspire you, don't forget to subscribe and share this video. You never know whose life your support may help us tell next. While other nurses chatted during a short break, Emma carefully inspected a chest emergency kit. One corner of the sterile package had a tiny opening. Most people would have ignored it. Emma did not. She immediately removed it from the cart and marked it as unsafe. A senior charge nurse named Linda Brooks walked into the room. "Why did you throw away that kit?" she asked. "The seal is damaged," Emma answered calmly. Linda looked at it for only a second. "It looks fine." "It isn't." Linda pressed the corner with her finger. Air leaked inside. For a moment she remained silent before saying, "Replace it from storage." Emma nodded without another word. She had learned long ago that arguing never changed people who believed they already knew everything. Enjoying the story so far? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a friend. It tells YouTube that you want more gripping stories like this. Emma finished checking every oxygen tank, airway tube, and trauma cart before returning to the hallway. No one asked why she inspected equipment more carefully than anyone else. No one noticed that she always memorized emergency exits. No one noticed she never sat with her back facing a door. Those habits had followed her for years. Years she never talked about. Then, just before midnight, everything changed. The deep sound of helicopter blades echoed across the hospital roof. One helicopter, then another, then a third. Doctors stopped talking. Patients looked toward the windows. Security guards hurried toward the emergency entrance. Emma slowly raised her head. She recognized that sound immediately. Not because helicopters were unusual. Because military helicopters always flew in formation exactly like that during emergency medical evacuations. Her expression changed for the first time that night. She whispered only 4 words. "They're coming too fast." The sound of the helicopters became louder with every passing second. Doctors looked toward the glass entrance. Patients waiting in the emergency lobby stopped talking. Even the security guards froze for a moment. Emma did not move. She listened. 3 aircraft. Heavy engines. Fast approach. Not a training flight. Not a routine transport. Something had gone terribly wrong. The helicopters landed one after another on the hospital rooftop. The entire building shook. Emergency lights flickered for a brief second. Linda looked toward the entrance. "What is happening?" No one answered. Seconds later, the emergency doors burst open. Rain rushed inside. Behind it came 6 military operators carrying a badly injured soldier on a stretcher. Every uniform was soaked. Mud covered their boots. Their faces showed exhaustion. One operator shouted loudly, "We need trauma support now." Doctors immediately surrounded the stretcher. The soldier looked no older than 30. His breathing was weak. Blood covered his left side. His pulse monitor barely showed a rhythm. Dr. Nathan Reed quickly stepped forward. "What happened?" "Roadside explosion during a classified mission," one medic replied. "Massive blood loss. Possible chest injury." Nathan looked toward his team. "Move him into trauma room 1. But before anyone pushed the stretcher away, the team leader looked around the room. His eyes searched every face. He ignored every doctor. Ignored every administrator. Ignored every senior nurse. Then he shouted one question. "Where is Raven?" The room became silent. Nobody understood the name. Linda frowned. "There is no Raven working here." The soldier suddenly gasped for air. His oxygen level dropped again. The monitor alarm screamed. Nathan looked worried. We're losing him. The military leader looked around once more. His eyes finally stopped on Emma. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then he said quietly, "I knew you'd still recognize that sound." Emma closed her eyes. She had hoped never to hear that name again. Raven. It was a name she had buried with her military career. Linda looked at Emma in complete confusion. "You know these people?" Emma ignored the question. She stepped toward the stretcher. Instead of looking at the monitor, she looked directly at the soldier's chest. One side barely moved. His lips had already turned blue. She gently touched his neck, then his shoulder. Finally, she placed one hand against the injured side of his chest. Her expression became serious. "He doesn't have enough time," Nathan asked. "What do you see?" "Pressure inside the chest. We need confirmation." "You won't get confirmation before his heart stops." The military medic immediately opened his emergency medical bag. Emma stretched out her hand. "Needle." Nathan hesitated. "We haven't completed assessment." Emma looked directly into his eyes. "If we wait, assessment becomes an autopsy." The entire room became quiet. Nathan quickly listened to the soldier's lungs. Nothing on the left side. His eyes widened. "She's right." Linda stared at Emma. The temporary nurse she had assigned to stock supplies was now giving instructions that even experienced trauma doctors were following. Nathan nodded. "I'm authorizing emergency decompression." Emma accepted the large needle. She found the correct position without measuring, without hesitation, without fear. Everyone held their breath. The needle entered. For one long second. Nothing happened. Then, a loud rush of trapped air exploded from the soldier's chest. The sound echoed across the trauma room. Almost immediately, the monitor changed. His oxygen climbed. 63, 70, 78, 84. The soldier took his first full breath since arriving. Several nurses looked at each other in disbelief. Nathan whispered, "Incredible." Emma shook her head. "No. This only bought us time. We need a chest tube." Nathan immediately prepared the sterile tray. This time no one questioned Emma. No one asked about her badge. No one cared that she was only a temporary nurse. All they cared about was saving the man lying on the stretcher. The operation had only just begun. The operating room doors closed behind the injured soldier. For the first time in several minutes, the emergency department became quiet. Not peaceful. Just quiet enough for everyone to realize what had happened. Every pair of eyes slowly turned toward Emma. Only minutes earlier, she had been the temporary nurse nobody asked for advice. Now an entire military rescue team had trusted her without asking a single question. Linda folded her arms. "I think someone needs to explain something." Emma removed her gloves and dropped them into the medical waste bin. "There isn't much to explain. You just performed procedures most nurses never touch. The patient needed help." "That's not what I asked." Emma stayed silent. Across the room, Dr. Nathan Reed studied her more carefully than before. Until tonight, he had assumed she was simply another contract nurse trying to finish a shift. Now that assumption no longer made sense. Before anyone could ask another question, one of the military officers approached Emma. His name tag read Captain Daniel Hayes. He stood straight despite looking completely exhausted. His uniform carried dirt, smoke, and dried blood. He stopped in front of Emma. "He's alive because of you." Emma shook her head. "He's alive because your team got him here." Daniel gave a small smile. "You always answer like that." Emma looked away. "I don't answer like anything." "You still do." Another unique story is coming. If you haven't already, press like, subscribe, and share so you never miss the next chapter. Nathan stepped closer. "Captain, how do you know Nurse Carter?" Daniel looked around the trauma bay. Every doctor had stopped working just long enough to hear the answer. "We served together." The room became silent again. Linda blinked. "Served?" Daniel nodded. She wasn't just a military nurse. She led evacuation medicine during some of the most dangerous rescue missions our unit ever faced. Emma interrupted immediately. "That was years ago." "It still happened." "I left." Daniel answered softly. Experience doesn't leave. Nathan looked surprised. You've actually worked in combat? Emma finally met his eyes. Yes. For how long? Long enough. She clearly had no interest in discussing it. Nathan recognized the expression. Some people carried memories that were too heavy for casual conversation. Just then the operating room phone rang. A surgical nurse answered. Everyone waited. After several seconds she smiled. The patient made it through the first stage. Several people quietly sighed with relief. Daniel closed his eyes. His shoulders relaxed for the first time all night. Thank God. Emma simply nodded. She picked up another unopened trauma kit and began checking the sterile seal. Linda watched in disbelief. You're checking equipment? Emma didn't stop. There will be another patient. You just saved a life. There will still be another patient. Nathan almost smiled. That sentence told him more about Emma than any military record ever could. A young resident named Olivia walked toward Emma. She had watched everything from the corner of the room. I've never seen anyone stay that calm. Emma continued arranging supplies. Calm helps the patient. Weren't you scared? Of course. You didn't look scared. Emma finally looked at her. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the job before fear catches you. Olivia quietly repeated those words to herself. She knew she would never forget them. Outside, rain continued falling against the hospital windows. Inside, the emergency department slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Stretchers arrived. Patients were admitted. Monitors beeped. Life continued. But something had changed. Doctors no longer saw Emma as the temporary nurse. They began watching the way she prepared equipment. The way she checked oxygen cylinders. The way she noticed problems before anyone else. Small details suddenly became important. Nathan walked beside her. I have one question. Emma smiled faintly. I thought you had several. I probably do. Ask one. Why did you leave the military? Emma's smile disappeared. For several seconds she said nothing. Finally she answered quietly. Because not every mission ends with everyone coming home. Nathan understood immediately. He did not ask another question. At that exact moment, another emergency alert echoed through the hospital. Major vehicle collision. Multiple casualties. ETA. For minutes. Every nurse immediately moved. Every doctor grabbed fresh gloves. Emma reached for the trauma cart she had personally inspected earlier that evening. Everything she needed was exactly where she had placed it. Nathan noticed. You prepare for disasters before they happen. Emma looked toward the ambulance entrance. No. I prepare because disasters always happen. The flashing blue lights of the first ambulance reflected across the rain-soaked hospital windows. Another long night had only just begun. The first ambulance stopped so suddenly that its tires screamed against the wet pavement. The rear doors opened before the vehicle had completely stopped. Two paramedics rushed out with a middle-aged man whose clothes were covered with broken glass and mud. Behind them, another ambulance arrived carrying a teenage girl with serious head injuries. The emergency department instantly became crowded. Every trauma room filled within seconds. Emma pushed the trauma cart toward the nearest bay. No one questioned why she took the lead. The events from earlier had changed the way everyone looked at her. Nathan quickly checked the first patient's airway. Blood pressure is dropping. Emma looked at the monitor. His heartbeat was fast but weak. She gently pressed the patient's abdomen. He groaned in pain. Possible internal bleeding, she said calmly. Nathan nodded immediately. Prepare blood. Olivia hurried to the blood warmer. Linda contacted the operating theater. The teamwork felt completely different from earlier that night. Nobody argued. Nobody wasted time. Everyone trusted each other. The second ambulance crew rushed into the next room. The teenage girl had stopped responding. Her breathing became slower every second. Emma stepped beside Olivia. Keep talking to her. Olivia looked surprised. She can't hear me. Maybe she can. Olivia leaned closer. You're safe. We're taking care of you. You have to keep fighting. The girl's fingers moved slightly. Nathan noticed. Good. Keep talking. Across the hallway, Captain Daniel Hayes remained outside the operating theater. His boots were still wet from the rain. He had not moved in almost 20 minutes. A young soldier approached him. "Sir." Daniel looked up. "The commander is asking for a report." Daniel answered quietly. "Tell him Logan reached surgery alive." The young soldier smiled with relief. "I will, sir." As he walked away, Nathan joined Daniel in the corridor. "I owe you an apology." Daniel looked confused. "For what?" "I judged Emma before I knew anything about her." Daniel smiled faintly. "You weren't the first. And probably won't be the last." Nathan folded his arms. "Why did she leave the military?" Daniel stared through the hospital window where rain continued falling. "Because she believed one mission was her fault." Nathan stayed silent. Daniel continued. "She saved 16 people that day. But she only remembers the 3 she couldn't save." Nathan lowered his eyes. "I've seen doctors carry guilt. I've never seen it last that long." Daniel answered softly. "The strongest people often carry the heaviest memories." Back inside Trauma 1, the injured driver suddenly lost consciousness. The heart monitor alarm filled the room. Olivia looked frightened. "His pressure is crashing." Nathan immediately began giving orders. Emma watched the monitor for only a second, before noticing something different. She gently lifted the patient's left shoulder. Then she checked his neck. She looked directly at Nathan. "I think his lung has collapsed." Nathan grabbed the ultrasound probe. Within seconds the screen confirmed it. He looked at Emma with surprise. "You saw it before the scan again." Emma simply replied, "The patient tells the story. The machine only confirms it." Only a few minutes later, both emergency patients had been stabilized. The atmosphere inside the department finally relaxed. Linda walked over carrying 2 fresh trauma kits. Without saying a word, she placed both on the upper shelf where Emma always preferred them. Emma noticed. "So, you changed the storage." Linda gave a small smile. "You were right." Emma looked at the neatly organized equipment. "It isn't about being right. It's about reaching it before someone dies." Linda nodded slowly. "I understand that now." Before either of them could continue, the operating theater doors opened. Every conversation stopped. A senior surgeon stepped into the hallway and removed his surgical mask. Captain Daniel Hayes immediately stood. Nathan joined him. Emma quietly walked closer, but remained several steps behind. The surgeon looked around before speaking. The operation was successful. A wave of relief spread across the hallway. Daniel closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." The surgeon continued. "He has a long recovery ahead. But he's alive." Daniel turned toward Emma. For several seconds neither of them spoke. Finally he said, "You saved another soldier." Emma looked toward the operating room doors. Then she quietly answered, "No. Tonight." A whole team did. The rain outside had finally begun to slow, but deep inside Emma's heart, the storm she had carried for years had only just begun to change. The emergency department slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but the atmosphere had changed forever. Doctors who had once walked past Emma without a second glance now greeted her with quiet respect. She did not seem to notice. She simply continued checking medication drawers, replacing used supplies, and preparing the next trauma room. To Emma, one successful rescue never meant the night was over. Another emergency could arrive at any second. Nathan walked beside her carrying 2 patient files. "I've been thinking." Emma smiled slightly. "That usually means another question." He laughed. "It does. You've treated patients in impossible situations." "Yes." "You've worked under enemy fire." "Yes." "You've made life or death decisions." Emma nodded once. Nathan looked directly at her. "So why choose to become an anonymous temporary nurse?" Emma carefully placed fresh bandages into a cabinet before answering. "Because hospitals heal people." Nathan waited. She continued. "And I needed one myself." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Nathan realized she was talking about wounds no X-ray could ever reveal. Across the corridor, Captain Daniel Hayes received another call. His expression immediately became serious. He ended the call and walked quickly toward Emma. "We have a problem." Emma looked at him. "What happened?" "The convoy that was traveling behind Logan's vehicle has finally reached the city." Nathan frowned. "Were there more casualties?" Daniel nodded. 3. "They're being brought here." Linda overheard the conversation. "Our trauma rooms are already nearly full." Daniel answered quietly. "I know." Emma immediately walked toward the central board. She studied every occupied room. Then she calmly spoke. "Move the stable fracture patient to observation 4. Linda blinked. "Observation 4? "Yes. It has cardiac monitoring." Nathan looked at the board. "That frees trauma 3. Emma nodded. "Exactly." Within seconds the staff began moving. Nobody questioned her judgment. They simply worked. A few minutes later another military ambulance arrived. This time there were no helicopters. Just flashing blue lights cutting through the rain. 3 injured soldiers were brought inside together. One had severe burns. Another had deep cuts across his arms and face. The third was unconscious after suffering a head injury. The emergency department exploded into motion. Emma immediately noticed the unconscious soldier. His breathing sounded different. Not weak. Blocked. She knelt beside him. "Jaw injury." Nathan looked up. "I'll prepare intubation." Emma gently held the soldier's head still. Olivia handed over the equipment. Everything happened in complete silence. Every member of the team knew exactly what to do. Within moments the breathing tube was secured. The soldier's oxygen level began climbing. Meanwhile, another patient suddenly cried out in pain. His burned arm began swelling rapidly. Emma looked at the wound. "Remove the watch." The young nurse hesitated. "It isn't near the burn." "It will be." The watch was removed only seconds before the swelling became severe enough to trap it against the skin. Olivia looked amazed. "I wouldn't have thought of that." Emma answered while continuing her work. "Experience teaches you to solve tomorrow's problem today." Nathan heard the sentence. He quietly smiled. Every conversation with Emma felt like another lesson. Like, subscribe, and share if you enjoy stories about courage, teamwork, and second chances. Hours passed. One by one, the military patients became stable enough for surgery or intensive care. Just after 3 o'clock in the morning, the emergency department finally became quiet again. Linda carried 2 cups of coffee toward Emma. "I wasn't sure whether you drink coffee." Emma accepted the cup. "Sometimes." Linda gave a small laugh. "That's the longest answer you've given me all night." Emma smiled for the first time. It was small, but genuine. Linda looked at her. "I owe you something." Emma shook her head. "No. I judged you." "You judged my badge." Linda lowered her eyes. "Maybe." Emma took a sip of coffee. "We all do that sometimes." Linda looked surprised. "You're not angry?" Emma stared through the rain-covered window. "Being angry doesn't help the next patient." Before Linda could answer, the surgical elevator opened. Captain Daniel Hayes stepped out with a tired smile. "Logan is awake." Emma slowly stood. He asked a question. "What was it?" Daniel smiled. He asked, "Did the quiet nurse make it home safely?" Emma looked away, almost embarrassed. Daniel continued. "I told him she was already saving someone else." For the first time in years, Emma felt something she had almost forgotten. Not pride. Not relief. Hope. As dawn slowly approached outside the hospital windows, she realized that perhaps the past did not have to define the rest of her life. But neither she nor anyone else knew that before the sun fully rose, a visitor from her military past would walk through the hospital doors, bringing news that would change everything. The first light of morning slowly pushed away the darkness outside Riverside Medical Center. The rain had finally stopped. Inside the hospital, however, the night shift still carried the weight of everything that had happened. Emma finished updating the last patient chart before quietly removing her gloves. She looked exhausted. Not because she had been awake all night. Because every emergency had awakened memories she had spent years trying to bury. Just as Emma prepared to leave, the emergency department doors opened again. This time, no ambulance arrived. No flashing lights. No rusing paramedics. An elderly man wearing a dark military coat walked slowly into the hospital. His silver hair was neatly combed. His posture remained perfectly straight despite his age. The security officer greeted him. "Can I help you, sir?" The man smiled politely. "I'm looking for Emma Carter." The receptionist checked the staff list. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. My visit couldn't wait." Linda overheard the conversation and walked over. "May I ask who's looking for her?" The old man reached into his coat pocket and showed a military identification card. "My name is General Richard Hale. I served with Major Emma Carter." Linda's eyes widened. Major? The title still sounded strange whenever someone used it. Emma noticed the conversation from across the hallway. The moment she saw the general, she stopped walking. She hadn't seen him in nearly 4 years. "General." He smiled warmly. "It's good to see you again, Emma." She shook his hand respectfully. "I didn't expect you." "I know. That's why I came myself." Nathan joined them. "Is everything all right?" General Hale nodded. "I hope it will be." He turned back toward Emma. "I watched last night's incident report." Emma looked surprised. "Already? When military personnel are involved, reports travel quickly." She sighed quietly. "I was hoping they wouldn't." The general smiled. "You haven't changed." Emma folded her arms. "I've changed more than you think." The general looked around the busy emergency department. "No. I think you've only changed uniforms." Before Emma could answer, Daniel Hayes walked into the hallway after speaking with Logan's surgeons. He stopped immediately when he saw the general. "Sir." General Hale nodded. "Captain Hayes. Good work last night." Daniel answered honestly. "Emma deserves that credit." The general looked toward Emma again. "Apparently everyone agrees." Emma shook her head. "I don't." The general asked Linda if they could use a small meeting room. A few minutes later, Emma, Nathan, Daniel, Linda, and the general sat around a simple table. The general placed a sealed folder in front of Emma. She stared at it without touching it. "What is it?" "A review." "I've already read every review. This one is different." Emma slowly opened the folder. Inside was a photograph. A rescue helicopter. A snow-covered mountain. 3 young soldiers smiling at the camera. Emma froze. She recognized every face. Her breathing became slower. Nathan quietly realized these were the men from the mission Emma never spoke about. The general broke the silence. After the mission, a full investigation continued. Emma looked confused. "I thought it ended years ago." "It didn't." She slowly looked up. "What are you saying?" General Hale carefully removed another document. "We recovered additional communication data from the aircraft recorder." Emma's hands began to tremble slightly. Daniel remained completely silent. He already knew what the general was about to reveal. The recording confirmed something important. Emma whispered, "What?" The second rescue helicopter never had permission to return. Emma stared at him. It wasn't the weather? The weather was part of it. But the aircraft had already suffered mechanical damage. Nathan looked shocked. General Hale continued. The pilot reported that another landing would almost certainly have killed everyone on board. Emma couldn't speak. For 4 years she had believed the helicopter had turned back because of her decision. Now she was hearing something entirely different. The general gently pushed the report toward her. "You never abandoned those men. You made the only decision that gave 17 others a chance to survive." Emma lowered her head. Tears slowly formed in her eyes. She had faced explosions, gunfire, disasters, death. Yet these simple words were harder to face than any battlefield. Daniel quietly spoke. "I tried telling you." Emma nodded. "I know. I just wasn't ready to believe it." For several minutes, nobody spoke. Finally, Emma folded the report closed. "What happens now?" The general smiled. "That depends on you." She looked confused. He continued. "The Military Medical Academy wants someone to teach emergency battlefield decision-making." Emma immediately shook her head. "No. You haven't even heard the offer." "I don't need to. You already know my answer." General Hale leaned forward. This isn't about returning to combat. It's about helping the next generation save lives. Emma looked through the meeting room window toward the busy emergency department. She watched Olivia comforting a frightened child, Nathan treating another patient, Linda organizing the morning shift. This hospital had become her home. But perhaps home wasn't the only place where people needed her. Before she could answer, an emergency alarm echoed through the building once again. Mass casualty incident. School bus collision. Multiple patients arriving in 8 minutes. Emma slowly stood. The general smiled knowingly. I suppose your answer can wait. Emma looked toward the trauma bay. No. The patients can't. Without another word, she walked out of the meeting room. Nathan, Linda, Daniel, and every available member of the emergency team followed her. Outside, sirens grew louder. Another test was about to begin. The sound of sirens grew louder every second. Inside Riverside Medical Center, every member of the emergency department moved with calm purpose. Nobody wasted a single step. Emma stood in front of the trauma board, reading the update that had just arrived from emergency dispatch. School bus carrying 23 children. Heavy rain. Truck lost control on a bridge. Multiple injuries. The room fell silent for a brief moment. Children always made every emergency feel different. Not because they were harder to treat, because every second felt even more important. Nathan walked beside Emma. 3 trauma rooms are ready. Emma nodded. We'll need 4. We only have 3. Emma looked at the driver's hands instead. His fingers were turning blue. She gently touched his neck. Then she looked at Nathan. His airway is getting worse. Nathan examined him again. A swelling was beginning to appear. It wasn't there 5 minutes ago. Emma nodded. It is now. Nathan prepared emergency airway equipment. He looked at Olivia. This is why we never stop reassessing. The patient's condition can change faster than the monitor. Olivia nodded. Every shift with Emma felt like another lesson that no textbook could teach. Across the department, Daniel Hayes helped carry medical supplies. One young nurse looked surprised. You don't have to do this, Captain. Daniel smiled. Uniforms don't save lives. People do. The nurse smiled back before hurrying away. Like this story so far? Press the subscribe button and share it with someone who believes ordinary people can become extraordinary heroes. More ambulances continued arriving. Children, teachers, parents who had followed behind in panic. The waiting room quickly filled with worried families. Emma noticed one little girl sitting completely alone. She held a torn backpack tightly against her chest. She wasn't crying. She simply stared at the floor. Emma walked over and sat beside her. My name is Emma. The girl whispered. My brother was sitting next to me. We got separated. Emma smiled gently. We'll find him. You promise? Emma paused. She never made promises she couldn't keep. Instead, she answered honestly. I promise we'll do everything we can. The little girl slowly nodded. A few minutes later, Daniel entered carrying a patient list. He smiled. I found him. Emma looked relieved. The brother? Daniel nodded. Minor injuries. He's asking for his sister. Emma gently held out her hand. Come with me. The girl's eyes filled with hope. As they walked down the corridor, she suddenly hugged Emma tightly. Thank you. Emma hugged her back for only a second. Then she led her toward the children's ward. Nathan watched from across the hallway. He quietly said to Linda, I used to think her greatest strength was her medical skill. Linda smiled. And now? Nathan looked toward Emma. I think it's that she never forgets the person behind the patient. Linda nodded. I was wrong about her. So was I. By late afternoon, every injured child had been treated. Some needed surgery. Some only needed stitches. Others simply needed reassurance that everything would be all right. No lives had been lost. The exhausted staff gathered quietly at the nurse's station. General Hale approached Emma once more. You handled today exactly as I expected. Emma looked tired but calm. I wasn't alone. You never are. He handed her a small envelope. Read it when you have time. What is it? A new beginning. Before Emma could ask another question, the general saluted respectfully and walked toward the exit. She watched him disappear through the hospital doors. Then she looked down at the unopened envelope in her hand. She had no idea that the decision waiting inside would change not only her future, but the future of every young medic she would one day train. The emergency department was finally quiet. For the first time in almost 24 hours, no ambulance sirens echoed outside Riverside Medical Center. The halls were calm. Patients rested peacefully. Doctors completed their final reports. Emma stood alone near the large window overlooking the parking lot. The morning sunlight reflected from the wet pavement left behind by the storm. She slowly opened the envelope General Hale had given her. Inside was a single letter. It was not an order. It was an invitation. Major Emma Carter, your experience has already saved countless lives. We believe it can save many more. We invite you to become the lead instructor for the National Military Emergency Medical Training Program. Emma quietly folded the letter. She wasn't ready to answer. Nathan walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. I guessed you'd still be here. Emma accepted one with a grateful smile. Thank you. Nathan noticed the envelope. Good news. I'm not sure. Emma handed him the letter. He read it carefully. When he finished, he looked back at her. This is a huge honor. It is. So why don't you look happy? Emma stared through the window. Because every choice means leaving something behind. Nathan nodded slowly. I understand. No, you don't. Emma smiled gently. And I hope you never have to. A few moments later, Olivia joined them. She looked exhausted after the long shift, but there was excitement in her eyes. Emma. Can I ask you something? Of course. When I become an emergency physician, I want to be as calm as you. Emma laughed softly. You don't. Olivia looked confused. I don't. Emma shook her head. You want to become the best version of yourself. Not another version of me. Olivia smiled. I'll remember that. Later that afternoon, Captain Daniel Hayes entered Logan's hospital room. The injured soldier looked much stronger than the night before. His color had returned. He managed a weak smile. I heard Raven is still impossible to thank. Daniel laughed. She'd probably leave the room if you tried. Logan smiled. Some people save lives because it's their job. She does it because it's who she is. Daniel quietly agreed. Back in the emergency department, Linda called everyone together. I have something to say. Doctors and nurses gathered around. Linda looked directly at Emma. When Emma first came here, I thought she was just another temporary nurse. I judged her before I knew her. I was wrong. She turned toward the staff. Today I'd like everyone to welcome her. Not as a temporary nurse, but as a permanent member of Riverside Medical Center. The room immediately filled with applause. Emma looked genuinely surprised. Nathan smiled. I may have helped convince administration. Emma looked around the room. For the first time in years, she felt she truly belonged somewhere. Just then the hospital director entered. Emma, may I speak with you? She nodded. Inside the director's office, another surprise waited. Several local news stations had requested interviews after hearing about the military rescue. The director smiled. They want the hero. Emma immediately answered. No. The director blinked. No. The story isn't about me. It's about teamwork. They should interview everyone. The director smiled. I expected that answer. Emma looked confused. So, what did you tell them? I told them our staff doesn't work for attention. We work for patients. Emma smiled. Thank you. As Emma left the office, she noticed a familiar face sitting quietly in the reception area. An elderly woman slowly stood. She carried a small paper bag. Excuse me. Emma walked over. Can I help you? The woman smiled warmly. You already did. Emma looked puzzled. The woman reached into the bag and removed a small, handmade bracelet woven from blue and white thread. My grandson was the little boy from the school bus. He wanted you to have this. Emma carefully accepted the bracelet. "It's beautiful." The woman nodded. He said, "The kind nurse made me brave." For a moment Emma couldn't speak. She had received military medals, commendations, certificates, but somehow, this simple bracelet meant more than all of them. She gently tied it around her wrist. "I'll treasure it." The elderly woman smiled with tears in her eyes. "I knew you would." As Emma watched her leave, she looked down at the bracelet once more. Perhaps true recognition was never found in medals or headlines. Perhaps it lived quietly in the hearts of the people whose lives had been changed forever. But just as peace finally seemed possible, Emma's phone vibrated. A secure military message flashed across the screen. "Immediate assistance requested. National Emergency Medical Response Team activation. Your expertise is urgently needed." Emma slowly looked toward the busy hospital behind her, then toward the message on her phone. A new mission had just begun. Emma looked at the secure message on her phone for several long seconds. The words were simple. Immediate assistance requested. But she understood exactly what they meant. National Emergency Medical Response Team. They were only activated when disasters were too large for ordinary emergency services. Nathan noticed her expression. "What happened?" Emma handed him the phone. He read the message carefully. "They need you." Emma quietly nodded. "It looks that way." Nathan returned the phone. "So, what are you going to do?" Emma looked around the emergency department. She saw Olivia helping a frightened child smile again. Linda training 2 new nurses. Daniel speaking with Logan's family. Every face reminded her why she had chosen this hospital. Before Emma could answer, the hospital television switched to breaking news. A powerful earthquake had struck a neighboring region. Entire neighborhoods had collapsed. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Emergency rescue teams from across the country were being deployed. Silence filled the room. Nathan slowly looked back at Emma. They really need experienced people. Emma closed her eyes. Years ago, she would have immediately accepted the mission. Years ago, she believed carrying every burden alone made someone strong. She had learned something different at Riverside. Real strength meant trusting others. Linda stepped beside her. "You don't have to choose between us and them." Emma looked confused. Linda smiled. "This hospital will still be here when you come home." Daniel nodded. "And those people deserve someone like you." Emma looked around the room. For the first time in years, she no longer felt alone. 30 minutes later, Emma stood inside a military transport aircraft. Doctors, nurses, firefighters, search and rescue specialists. Everyone quietly checked equipment. No one spoke much. They all knew what waited ahead. Hours later, the aircraft landed near the disaster zone. The destruction stretched as far as Emma could see. Collapsed buildings, broken roads, families searching through rubble, emergency workers moving without rest. Emma immediately joined the medical command center. A rescue leader hurried over. "We have dozens of trapped civilians. We're short on experienced trauma coordinators." Emma nodded. "Show me the map." Within minutes she reorganized treatment areas. She divided teams. She created evacuation routes. She placed the most experienced medics where they were needed most. The rescue operation immediately became faster. General Hale watched quietly from across the command tent. One officer asked, "Was she always this good?" The general smiled. "No. She became this good because she never stopped learning." Late that evening, rescue workers located a collapsed apartment. Voices could still be heard beneath the concrete. Emma crawled into a narrow opening with one firefighter. Inside they found a father shielding his young daughter. Both were alive. The father had severe injuries. The little girl held tightly to his hand. Emma smiled gently. "We're getting you both out." The father looked at her. "Save her first." Emma shook her head. "We're saving both of you." Working carefully, the rescue team lifted heavy concrete one piece at a time. After nearly an hour, both patients were safely removed. The little girl hugged her father while rescue workers applauded quietly. Emma stepped back. She never wanted the applause. Seeing the family together again was enough. 3 days later, the national emergency operation ended. Thousands of people had received medical care. Hundreds of lives had been saved. As the teams prepared to leave, the Minister of Health announced a special ceremony to honor everyone involved. Emma quietly stood in the back row. She hoped no one would notice her. Instead, the minister called her name. Emma Carter. She slowly walked to the front. The minister handed her a medal. Emma accepted it respectfully. Then she stepped to the microphone. Everyone expected a speech about courage. Instead, she smiled and said, "This medal belongs to every doctor who stayed awake all night. Every nurse who held a frightened child's hand. Every firefighter who entered a collapsing building. Every paramedic who refused to give up. No one saves lives alone." The audience stood and applauded. Not because of the medal, because of the truth. 1 week later, Emma returned to Riverside Medical Center. The staff gathered at the entrance. Olivia smiled. "You came back." Emma laughed softly. "I told you this was home." Nathan handed her a fresh hospital identification badge. This one was different. Instead of temporary nurse, it read, "Senior Emergency Trauma Educator." Emma looked at him. "You changed my title." Nathan smiled. "No. You earned it." Linda pointed toward the training room. "Your first class is waiting." Emma opened the door. Inside sat 20 young nurses. Some looked nervous. Some looked excited. All of them stood as she entered. Emma smiled. "Please sit down." No one moved. One student finally spoke. "We've heard about everything you've done." Emma gently placed the blue and white bracelet from the little boy on the desk. Then she looked around the room. "I hope..." The students looked confused. She continued, "I hope one day, people remember yours. Not because you became famous, but because someone is alive today. Simply because you chose to care." The room became completely silent. Outside, the sun shone brightly over Riverside Medical Center. Inside, a new generation of lifesavers began learning from someone who had finally forgiven herself. Emma no longer carried the past as a burden. She carried it as wisdom. And every lesson she shared became another chance for someone else to save a life.